This section 11 is going to show us how to separate the class specification, the implementation, and the client code. So I alluded to that in the previous video, but what we're going to do is separate what's called the class definition and member function definitions and the program that uses the class into separate files. And that's because it's good design in order to do that. There's also some other reasons that we will talk about. So you are going to create for a single program, and we're going to use the circle example. We are going to create the circle program using 3 different files. You're going to have a .h file, and that's what they call the class specification file. It's called the .h because it's what we call a header file. That is going to hold all of your prototypes. Then we're going to put the member functions for that class in what's called an implementation file. That's the guts basically of all of your code. That's your setters. It's the definition of the getters. It's the actual code that defines the setters, the getters, the calculate diameter or calculate area, etc. That is set in its own file, and then this file should be pound include, the class specification file. So that means it's going to pound include, in our case, circle.h. And then we have a client program. The client program should also use a pound include, and it pound includes the class specification file as well. We will show you an example of all of this. In order to prevent a header file from being included twice, we also have some special code that we have to write. And so this is what it looks like here on the slide. We will talk it through when we go through the example. It says here symbol 1_name is usually the name of the header file in all caps. So that's an industry protocol is what they call it. And this pound if in def we will talk about a little bit more in a minute. What should be done inside the class versus outside the class? So inside the class should design and provide the functions to store and retrieve the data. So it basically includes your instance fields, your getters, your setters, and any methods that belong to the class that work with the data. And then in general, your input and output should be done by functions that use those class objects rather than by the class member functions. And the reason for that, you are then separating your output from your the class object. And you want to do that because maybe you want to use this particular program in several different countries, so you want to separate the input and output, which could be language specific, from the code behind that's not going to change. Alright, those are the 3 slides that kind of introduce you to this. In section 711 we are going to take our circle class and show you how to create these .h files, the .cpp file for the class, and then your client program, which is the program that includes main. Okay, we switched over to Visual Studio, and we want to show you how to separate out the implementation files from the client program using the circle class. There's going to be several things that we do here. In order to get a clean view though, I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. So this particular file here, circle demo, I'm going to select all and copy this code, and then I'm actually going to create a new project. And rather than go ahead and add it to these, because we want to make this, this is our circle. Oh, this is for the whole entire solution. So this is our circle with separate implementation. We want to create it as an empty project. And we're going to go ahead and create our driver program as the program that has main.cpp. In Visual Studio, the way to do that is right click. We're going to add a new item, and we just want to add a .cpp file. We are going to call this main, or we'll call it our circle driver. It's our client program. I call it a driver program. And for right now, I'm going to go ahead and paste in all of the work that we had before. Okay. And so then we're going to start to talk about how do we actually separate out, and what's going to happen is this. We aren't going to have any of the circle class within this program, okay? And we're going to go ahead and delete some of this code out of here. To clean this up a little bit, we're going to keep our display results. And this is an example of what they said about, separating what you're outputting here. You want to separate what you're outputting here from your circle class, because then you keep all of your functionality for the circle within the circle, and you keep all of your outputting somewhere else, is what they're saying with that previous slide that we looked at. So first thing that we have to do, number one, you're going to create a header file. So I'm going to right click and add a new item. When you add this item, you actually choose the .h file instead of a .cpp. And now this is where it gets a little bit, you have to be careful. You must name your header file exactly the same name as a class. So we're creating a circle class, so it's going to be called circle.h. Then in resource files, or actually my source files, I wonder if I could put it under resource. I'm going to put it under source files. I'm going to add a new item. Resource files would be more like your data files if you were working with data files. So we want to put it under source files. We're going to put our class under the source files. And it's a circle class. So now the idea is that I am going to take, and it's not as easy as what I'm going to do here in just a second. There's a lot more involved, and I'll show you what to do. But the idea is that I take all of this code, I'm going to copy it. Actually, I'm going to cut it, and I place it over here in its separate file, like that. And then what I need to do when I'm creating my circle driver, then we got a couple of things. It's going to start yelling at us because it says it doesn't recognize circle. And so here's where then I would need to tell it, I'd have to say #include and then circle.cpp, because then that would tell it where it's going to find the circle definition. Now, I think if I run this, it should execute. It's not exactly what we want to do, but it starts to get you along the ideas that you want to separate your driver from your implementation. Okay, we have some errors, so we're not going to run it. We want to take a look. It says POW is not found. If I double click on this, it should bring up that line of code, and it's not recognizing POW because I did not have at the beginning of my circle class my math library, #include CMath. Now, when it's a library or a header file that C++ has defined, you have the bracket, the less than and the greater than symbols around it. When it's something that we've defined, then you have the, like right here, it's in quotes. So we defined circle.cpp. Now, we had CMath right here, but it didn't recognize it because it needed it in that other file. So I'm going to cross my fingers that this is going to execute, even though it's not exactly what we want to have set up, and I'll tell you why in a minute. You can see that the code executes, and so I've separated my driver from the rest of my code. Okay, even though I separated the driver from the rest of my code, I didn't use this circle.h, okay? And that was, remember, one of the things that they said is I have to put my class specification in a .h file, and then all of my function definitions in an implementation file. So the next video is going to show you how to do that.